welcome to an episode here of Yankee Offseason Talk. Gonna come on here a couple days a week now and just do a little live stream for the viewers here on YouTube or X, wherever you're watching this. And yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit of the Yankee offseason, a little bit about things I've heard, not just around the Yankees, but I guess around the league. I've heard a little bit. Especially, the stove is kind of heating up right now because the winter meetings begin next week. The winter meetings are a week from today. A week from yesterday. I'm sorry. I keep thinking I thought it's Monday all day. So that begins the 2025 winter meetings, and we've already seen signings happen. Last night the public got the news that Devin Williams was signing with the New York Mets. Um, didn't shock me. Can't say I was surprised. I got wind earlier in the day that he was signing, didn't know where. It was between the Yankees and I not the Yankees, excuse me, the Mets and the Cubs. And I think going to the Mets made sense for him. He doesn't have to leave his family, move from New York. He liked it here in New York. And if we're going to be honest, I wrote last week that Devin Williams a reunion makes sense for the Yankees. I think we all knew deep down a reunion between the two were very, very unlikely. There were just Devin Williams' demeanor around the team wasn't great for most of the year. He had his moments where he was great, but he just really wasn't. He wasn't what they expected when they acquired him. And I know the underlying numbers. I know he pitched 62 innings and appeared in 67 games. I know the underlying numbers. He was in the 97th percentile of strikeouts. I understand that. But then if you look at the optics standpoint and if you use the eye test. Now look, I use metrics to back up arguments. I also use the eye test to back up arguments, and my eyes told me that for a majority of the season he looked, for lack of a better word slash phrase, unenthused, like he didn't want to be there. Like defeated was definitely one that, there were certain games I can vividly see where he was just like, oh, not again, like defeated. Now, I'm going to say this as well. I think part of it's on the Yankees and Matt Blake. And I love Matt Blake. I'm a Matt Blake supporter. I think Matt Blake going into his contract year, I think needs job security. With that being said, they had him tinker with his pitch mix, where his changeup to both lefties and righties was being used way more than in years past. I don't know if that had something to do with it because batters were then able to sit changeup because he didn't have command really much of his fastball all year. And that might be something that's fixed with the Mets. Don't rule that one out. I'm saying that this is good for Devin. I'm happy he got paid, and he got paid, big time. Relievers are gonna make money. And I'm gonna say this right now for any Yankee fan listening. Don't expect Edwin Diaz. Probably don't expect Robert Suarez. Those guys are looking for closer contracts. They are. They are looking for contracts as closers, not as middle relievers. Devin Williams is being paid as a closer. Devin Williams might be used as a middle reliever if they get Diaz back, which I don't think they will. I'm hearing a lot of Blue Jays. I'm hearing Dodgers. They're going to be very heavily involved, and given what those two teams need this offseason in terms of closing, I feel like those two teams might be more motivated to go the extra mile than the Mets. That's my opinion. I'm not in the negotiating room, so I don't know what's gonna happen. But I am saying, oh my god, I am saying that I think Diaz ends up walking, and which would move Williams to be their closer, which is probably not what they want. And I created this before Williams signed, but I've been really hard at work doing stuff like this, and this will appear on socials soon, and I'll do it for the Mets as well, or we'll have someone from our socials team do it for the Mets, aka the socials team is pretty much whoever's covering that team, rating wise and reporting wise. I'm gonna try and have that person do like the oh my god, nothing's going in for the Nets right now, for the Knicks right now. My god. Um, so I created this little graphic in Canva because their stuff is super easy and I can do it on my iPad, which is awesome. I don't need to whip out my laptop all the time now. I can just use my iPad. Adobe Illustrator on an iPad is horrible and I don't recommend it to anyone. And it's also super expensive and I get Canva for free. So Canva Premium, I should say. Canva Premium I get for free as a student, and my mom's a teacher, and I did like a team thing, so it like added me to a team, so I get free forever. Anyway, um, so I pulled one of their things, I made it my own, and made three different graphics from the same thing. And a lot of stuff I make on Canva or Illustrator is my own. This one I pulled from stuff, and you'll see some other ones. David Bednar is the closer. Cash said last week, and this is why I'm pretty much telling you, do not expect Diaz or Suarez. I know Mike Francesa went on his podcast yesterday saying, well, the Yankees should jump right on Diaz. It's not happening. Okay, I could promise you. Unless Edwin Diaz calls the Yankees and says, I'll come there on a deal because the Mets tried to replace me, it's not happening. I'd be floored if he came to the Yankees because they have David Bednar. And while you could say to me, "Oh, well, that would be what the Mets are doing," yeah, but guess what? Camilo Duvall was a closer, and now he's your eighth inning man. And you have Cruz who could pitch in high leverage and Hill. I don't have Jake Bird on here because I don't think he'll make the thing. I don't even have him on the minor league depth. I have Yeri De Los Santos. I have Brent Hendrick, who I think will actually make his way on this, and Harrison Cohen. Assuming he's unprotected currently in the Rule 5 draft, assuming that Harrison Cohen is back within the Yankee organization, we might see him at some point this year, and he's been impressive. He's been one of the relievers in the minors in Stratton that have caught my eye over the past year, and certainly has been hyped up a little bit by Yankee socials. I like his game. I like his style. I wouldn't be surprised to see him. But the Yankee bullpen, as you can see, needs help. I've said and I've beaten a drum. I mentioned it yesterday. They need to go get someone. I really do like Danny Colum. Okay, the strikeout numbers are not great, and he allows a lot of balls in play. And the if we look statistically, the Yankees did non-tender Mark Leiter Jr., which I think is the right decision. But you can alibi for Mark, and I'm sure his camp will use this in negotiations this offseason, saying that, okay, well, the Yankee defense did him no favors, and he was the unluckiest pitcher in baseball, where his ERA should have been in the mid threes, and instead it was close to 5 because of how bad the Yankees defense was behind him. And yeah, that's been a thing. Like the mental mistakes and all that, that's been a theme for the Yankees, and they didn't have enough mental mistakes and mental errors in the postseason where it's going to be a main storyline to this year like it was in 25. And I also think you have McMahon now for a full year. You're going to have Caballero at short, who's probably better than Volpe. And I'm sure when Volpe's healthy, he might be fine. Jazz is going to be a full year now at second base. First base should be a concern, and it's Ben Rice. That's going to be a concern for me. And then I don't know what they do in the outfield. Trent Grisham, I think, will be fine in center field. I mean, we don't need Willie Mays out in center. We need someone who's not going to botch a fly ball. And I don't think Trent will. Judge is fine and right as far as I'm concerned. And as far as his arm or his elbow is fine, he's fine and right. And then they need to figure out left. I think I've always said this. I think Tucker's the better fit for the Yankees long term. Bellinger's a great short term player, but from what I've heard, and Heyman said it on his podcast a little bit, that there's a gap in negotiations, and it's not a small one. That was today, right? It's not a small gap. It's kind of a big gap. Well, the gap is based on the years, not based on solely the money. I'm sure a little bit of money. The gap is the years. The Yankees really don't want to go beyond 4 years, and Bellinger's camp is looking for much more, like 6 or 7. And the Yankees definitely don't want to do that. And power to them. If Scott Boras says, okay, fine, we're going to walk away, you can expect Brian Cashman then to make a call to Casey Close and say, all right, what's it going to take for Tucker? And go that route. Because I wrote a column, it just came out maybe 2 or 3 hours ago. Well, it's 8 o'clock, almost 9 o'clock. I wrote a column. I'm going to try and share my screen if I can. About some free agent updates before last. Okay. I wrote some free agency updates before the offseason. I mean, before the winter meetings, which take place next week. So, if you give me a second, I'm going to try my best to share my screen. Uh, to show my column screen. Okay, it's not going to let me, but I could do this. Oh, perfect. I can get Tucker and Bellinger in the picture. Okay. So I wrote about both Tucker and Bellinger on my column. Just ignore my fingers right there so I could take a screenshot. I wrote about both Tucker and Bellinger. Now, the Yankees right now see Tucker as a fallback option to Bellinger, which is true. It's a pretty damn good fallback option, in my opinion. I think it should be the other way around, where Bellinger is the fallback option to Tucker, because I think Tucker makes you an infinitely better team. And I'll talk about more so why I believe this in a second, because I do have a reason. Okay. So I wrote about Cody Bellinger that the Yankees remain, and this is before Heyman spoke on his podcast about the huge gap. Um, The Yankees remain frontrunners to reunite with Cody Bellinger, with negotiations currently focused on years, not just money. Bellinger, a Boris client, will likely shop his options before committing to a team that's known, offering a lot of defensive versatility and lefty power. It seems that Bellinger will become one of, if not the most sought after free agents on the market. The Mets, Phillies, and Dodgers remain involved. Now, I didn't mention it in here. It's in the defensive versatility article that I linked there, that I wrote a full profile on Bellinger earlier this offseason. This column served more as like a, here's what their markets currently look like as we're entering the winter meetings. And what I didn't mention there, but I mentioned in my other piece, was the stark difference in home and road splits with Bellinger between Yankee Stadium and the road. The Yankees played very well. They were the second best road team in baseball. It didn't feel like that for a lot of the year. Remember, they went through a stretch in like June where they lost like 10 road games in a row. Like, it was bad, right? They were horrible on the road in like April. They had like the worst stretch since like the Stump Merrill Yankees or whatever it was. And they still were the second best road team, only to the Brewers in baseball. Well, Cody Bellinger was, compared to his numbers at Yankee Stadium where he batted 299, he was pedestrian on the road. I think he batted like 241. Not great. And you got to know that that's something that the Yankees know and can use to their power in the negotiations of, you're leaving Yankee Stadium, a lefty-friendly park. That might not help you. Citi Field isn't going to be as great for you. Philadelphia, maybe. Chavez Ravine, he's played there, so I can't really say, well, Chavez Ravine is going to suck. But more so for the Mets, I think the Dodgers would. I mean, I think Philadelphia would be neutral, because that's been a kind of a good lefty park. And then I wrote about Tucker. And I said, once thought to get the next mega contract, Tucker's market remains a mystery. Teams like his game, but teams are not in love with him the way they are for others. He had a down year in 2025. Tucker is looking for a permanent home. According to Passon of ESPN, they still project him to have a 10-year contract, which is why he wants a permanent home and not a short-term deal with opt-outs. I said that still can't be ruled out, though, because I don't know. Because Casey Close might do that. Because if this drags on, he might be like, just get me somewhere. So you never rule anything out. And I said ESPN projects it to go to January. Tucker's a tremendous hitter and a solid defender who would make any ball club better. The concern is more about the injury history. A lot of teams on Bellinger see Tucker as a fallback option. All true. Now, the Yankees can pull what the Giants did last offseason and screw everybody, which I think they should do. What do I mean? Well, before Bellinger, who was the Yankees' original fallback option? Assuming when not Bellinger, when Juan Soto left, who was the Yankees' primary fallback option? The primary fallback option, for those who don't know, was Willie Adames, who had the first 30 home run season for San Francisco Giants since Barry Bonds in 2025. I mean, his numbers weren't jump off the page, but they were okay. He was gonna be their thing. They would have figured out the outfield, but they were gonna try and sign Adames. I forget who Willie Adames' agent is, but whoever it is smart because he signed the day before Soto did. He signed on Saturday. And what that did was that's true. The Yankees and every other team that were in on Soto, that were there to the end and wanted Soto's services, now that's one name that they coveted off the board. If I were the Yankees and they get to an uncomfortable spot with Bellinger, get Tucker. If that's, that could literally be pretty much what they did with Fried, where it was they had ongoing negotiations. Soto comes off the board. Cool. They call right up. I believe it was Casey Close. It was Excel Sports Management for Fried. It might have been the same agent. And said, okay, what are we doing here? And it was like you go to the 7th or 8th year and we got a deal. And the Yankees are like, cool, let's do it. And they did what the Mets did with Williams and what the Blue Jays did with Cease, and they deferred the contract. And if the Yankees are to sign Tucker and Amaya this offseason, I'm gonna get to Tatsuya and Amaya in a minute. They're gonna have to defer part of the contract. That's fine, honestly. I mean, I don't have a problem with deferrals. I have a problem with deferring, whole deals and whole, kind of like Otani, where Otani's only making $2 million for a couple years and then he retires and it's like 22 million. That's a little much for me. But in terms of like actual deferrals, like, okay, you're making this much this year, but in 2026 it escalates. That I think is fine. Or in 2028, whatever. That I think is fine. Anyways, I think Tucker is the better fit than Bellinger for this team. And I've said that and I've said that for a while now. I think Tucker is a much, much better fit. I think his underlying numbers, I think his profile, I think his best years are ahead of him and not behind him. I think you can argue that Bellinger's best years could be behind him because Bellinger's getting older. Um, this is from Ken Rosenthal, actually, and it's funny because we were literally just talking about deferrals like 5 seconds ago. And he just tweeted out. So Ken Rosenthal must be watching. According to the Players Association, the deferrals in Dylan Cease's 7-year, $210 million contract with the Blue Jays reduced the present day payroll to the present day value of his contract to 184.6 million or 26.4 million a season. That salary will be the annual luxury tax charge. meaning the 216 reported thing is not what's the luxury tax hit. And I feel like we knew this. I think that that kind of makes sense. What the hell are the Knicks doing here? What's going on? Oh my god. Um, I think. I mean, they're gonna have to defer money. I think the Yankees will, because they're gonna cry luxury tax. They're gonna cry this. Nothing's going. I'm turning it off. They're gonna cry luxury tax. They're gonna cry this. They're gonna cry that. And it's unfortunate, but that's what's gonna happen with the Yankees. This isn't George anymore. This is Hal. This is how Hal does things. And I expect the Yankees to sign Tatsuya and Mai. I really do. I'm kind of getting to the point in negotiations between, what's been reported and what I've been told. I wrote in my column that Philly is kind of on the outside looking in. They could be a threat for both him and Okamoto, but they're kind of on the outside of this. Now, them signing him wouldn't be a shock, but it kind of would. My reason, I can see them going after Okamoto because he more fits, what they need, especially if they want to trade Alec Boehm. But Bryson Stott hasn't been what they thought he was, and their starting rotation isn't going to be horrific, or they can add a veteran and would be fine. So I don't have a problem. I think Imai makes sense for the Yankees, and I think if they want a Japanese player, they're gonna have to go all out and get him. And I think, you know, the Giants not being involved, you know, I saw the talking baseball thing today about the look what the first team that comes up on Google. And cool. Where it says source Instagram and you click on that, it goes to a Mets fan page that on a post that has 3 likes from the beginning of November. It's not me. That's not saying he's signing with the Mets. The Mets are probably going to talk to him, but if Amai is going to hold, steady on, I don't want to be on a team with Japanese players. Well, Kodai Senga is a Japanese pitcher. If Amai doesn't want to be on a team with Japanese players, let alone another Japanese pitcher, the Mets are probably out of it. Just saying. I don't know. But it seems like Amai wants to make his own, wants to control his own destiny. And that's really all I have for today. Now tomorrow, we are going to do a live stream tomorrow, and I'm going to post it on my socials. Tomorrow, I forget what time, is Yankee Hot Stove, the first edition of the 2025 offseason. 2025-2026 offseason, and I'm sure Jack Curry will probably rebut half the crap I just said, and I would believe Jack Curry because he knows what he's talking about. Not saying I don't, but I think they're going to sign Tucker and Amai. He's going to say tomorrow Bellinger's a top priority. They really like Amai, but XYZ. That's probably what's going to be said. So all right, signing off. Go Knicks. Go Yankees. Have a good night. I'll see everybody on here tomorrow. It's going to be a live stream during the episode, and then we'll talk after the episode.